The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 150. Trey Burke is named Big Ten Player of the Year. That and more on this week's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. For Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Monday night, Trey Burke capped a sensational sophomore season as he was named the Big Ten Player of the Year. He becomes the first Michigan player since Glenn Rice in 1989 to receive the honor. Burke thanked his teammates and coaches, saying he wouldn't have achieved this honor without them. If it's possible that one loss can suck the life out of a team, we might have seen that happen on Sunday as the Wolverines fell to Indiana in crushing fashion, blowing a 5-point lead with just a minute to play. Can they overcome the disappointment and regroup for the Big Ten and NCAA tournaments? That is the question I posed to Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Rod will join us on Michigan Gameday in just a few minutes with his answer. First, let's get our Wolverine warm-ups in. It seems as if the football season ended just a few weeks ago, but it's been nearly 2 months. This Saturday, Coach Brady Hoke and the Wolverines take to the field again as spring practice gets underway. Next week, Kyle Meinke from MLive will join us on our spring football preview show, so don't forget to join us for that. Coach Barnes-Arico and the Lady Wolverines made it to the second round of the Big Ten tournament and then ran out of gas against arch-rival Michigan State. It's been a great season, and they should be a lock for the NCAA tournament, but we won't know for sure until the seedings are announced next Monday, March 18th. We knew Coach Red Berenson and the hockey team's only hopes of making it back to the NCAAs for a record-setting 23rd consecutive appearance would be running the table and winning the CCHA tournament. So far, so good, as Michigan dispatched Northern Michigan in 2 games this weekend. Now it's on to round 2 with no margin for error. Michigan wrestling finished 6th at this weekend's Big Ten tournament. Softball took advantage of spring break, getting in 10 games last week down in Florida. They compiled a 7-3 record and are ranked 14th heading into this week's action, sporting a 17-6 record. Coach Eric Bakich and baseball put together another good weekend of action, going 3-1 at the San Diego State Invitational. After a slow start, they've now won 6 of their last 8 games. We'll have more on all of this coming up later on Wolverine Quick Hits. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm still numb after watching how we lost the Indiana game on Sunday. It is just unimaginable to me that we could blow a 5-point lead in under 60 seconds, especially given the fact that during that stretch, you had 2 of your best free throw shooters at the line in Tim Hardaway and Trey Burke, and they both missed the front ends of a 1-1. Mind-boggling. Next up on Michigan Game Day, basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News shares his thoughts with us on how it happened and how Michigan must recover from the disappointment quickly. Here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW, Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. Back with us on Michigan Game Day, Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Good to have you back, Rod.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on again, Mike.
Well, Sunday's game, Rod, as we well remember, went down to that last second, Jordan Morgan's missed tip. And, in the last 60 seconds, there were numerous opportunities for Michigan to seal the win away. But in the end, there really aren't any excuses for how and why they let this one get away, are there?
Yeah, there were things that they could have done on their own, which is what Coach John Beilein said, is that it shouldn't have to come down to those things. There were ways that there were exterior things like the intentional missed call there on Glenn Robinson's breakaway. There were free throws they could have made, but it's really not just one thing. They could have had a few more rebounds down the stretch there. They could have played defense differently on Cody Zeller. It's not one thing that you point to and say they lost because of A, B, or C. It's really the combination of all of those things that came together. I guess the amazing thing is that they even had an opportunity to win that game at the end after being out-rebounded by so much, after being down in that second half after taking such a big lead in the first half. That's just a seesaw game, and it shows the margin of error is so thin that if either Burke's or Morgan's shots fall in the final seconds, then this whole narrative, this whole discussion about what the season is and what everything that happened this year, including in that game, all comes down to that one little basket and whether that thing goes in or not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. You know, you just mentioned that rebounding differential. Again, it was mind-boggling. I think we're sort of getting used to that, especially the way Indiana controlled the offensive glass. I mean, I think most fans watching that game could not believe we couldn't box out better than that. But, you know, against average opponents, you're going to be hard-pressed to stay in a game with that kind of an effort on the boards. But, you know, to Michigan's credit, even when you look at those glaring rebounding statistics, to their credit, they still found a way to stay in the game.
Yeah, and what Beeline has said is that it's more the scheme that they run. So it's the fact that they have to help on defense. So you step up to help another guy because of penetration, and you're out of position to get an offensive rebound. And then when the shot goes up, you got to turn around and find a guy. And there's a difference between guarding a guy and knowing where he is, stepping up to help, and then having to find someone on the boards. And that's a little bit different for them. It's something, obviously, that they haven't mastered. But you've got to figure out a way to, I mean, I think they need to go more zone, and that's going to help at least in the short term, because in that zone, you know you're in a position, you know there should be a guy somewhere, at least you're in position to get the rebound initially instead of being away from the rim and having to find somebody. I think that's a key adjustment they're going to have to make. What he said is that they would give up 1,000 points if they played zone, and I don't think giving up too many points is the problem. I think giving up too many rebounds is the bigger issue now that we've seen in the past few games.
Well, you'd think at this point of the season, if Coach Beeline could fix it, it would have been fixed already. But, I mean, heading into the tournament, do you really think there's really anything he can do other than, as you mentioned, going into that zone that's really going to make a huge difference in the rebounding game?
Yeah, I think that's the only thing schematically that he can do, because you rebound how you rebound now. The only thing you can do different for me is to put me in a better position to rebound. If I don't know where my guy is, I just don't know. I'm not going to figure that out with a couple of practices. I think it's a whole technical thing and a whole schematic thing that's going to be the short-term fix, if we're going to see anything that's done at all. Otherwise, they're ripe for another upset from a 14 seed or whoever they're playing in the NCAA tournament. Heck, they might even be ripe for another Penn State upset in the Big Ten tournament on Thursday if they're not able to fix some of these things in the short term. It's just really a bugaboo that they're going to have to figure out something to throw a patch on that broken arm of their rebounding, because that's what's going to kill them in just about any game. If you get out-rebounded by 15 or 20 and the other team gets more offensive rebounds and you get defensive rebounds, you're just not going to beat anybody.
Well, the defensive effort on Sunday, Rod, was as good as I've seen it this year, other than, again, boxing out. Busy slapping away balls, getting to loose balls. I thought they rotated much better, played good help defense, as good as we've seen lately. Your take on that defensive effort? Absolutely better. And I think the difference is Jordan Morgan being back in the lineup and being somewhere closer to 100%. He said he's probably won't get to 100 this year, but he's somewhere in the 90s now, and you saw it the way that he moves. He doesn't have the explosive power that we've known him to have, where on the fast break or coming off the pick and roll, he's dunking balls. Now he's looking just to lay him up and to get him on the glass, and that may be something else they got left out there on the court, was a few points where he's around the rim, he's near the rim, he's trying to just finesse the ball when we're so used to him being a power guy, or he can put back the last putback of the game, maybe he dunks that, or maybe he tips that in if he's 100%. It's not making excuses for it, but it's saying he's not quite there, and the difference between him pre-injury and now is just little things like that. Is that he's never been a strong two-hand dunk, always Chris Webber
type of guy, but he's been a consistent guy where he doesn't miss as many of those shots as we've seen him missing. The defense in general was superb yesterday, and that was the difference between that first meeting in Bloomington and what we saw yesterday, is that they didn't give Zeller a lot of inside looks. They didn't get Watford or Oladipo even to a degree. Those guys didn't go off for 15 or 20 points. They didn't get open shots. A lot of the stuff was free throws that they got, transition baskets. Oladipo got some putbacks because, again, he didn't get boxed out. But the defense in general in a half-court set was absolutely better. It's among the best games they've had defensively against the top-tier competition.
Two other players I'd like to mention that I thought were stellar on defense yesterday. I thought Hardaway played a great game on defense, and I think you're starting to see what a really solid defensive player Karis LeVert is, too.
Yeah, and you need those guys to contribute on both ends of the floor, and I think that's the identity that's missing from LeVert, is that we're seeing him as kind of a defensive stopper. The old school folks remember Mike Griffin from that 89 team that wasn't a great offensive guy and really didn't shoot the ball, but he was a great defensive guy. And I don't think LeVert can be cast in that mold. He's got to be an offensive guy. He's got some talent. And Hardaway the same way is he's got to be not just a good defensive guy. He's got to be a defensive stopper if he's going to be at that 2 position. And when you get into the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament, he can't just take time off, which it seems like sometimes is that he doesn't always attack the rim. He doesn't, from a defensive standpoint, he doesn't get the rebounds. We've seen plenty of games this year where he's had 5, 6, 7, 8 rebounds, and he's really attacked the rim defensively, and he had 2 yesterday. So those types of things, you see the improvement in his game and you see the level that he's at, but you know with all the other deficiencies on the floor, you want Hardaway to give you just a little bit more to be an elite-level defender. Maybe not on the Oladipo and Kraft level, a little bit below that, but you know that team becomes a different team, and Michigan becomes an elite-level team if Hardaway can get to that point.
Well, you know, Rod, we heard a lot about the Trey Burke, Victor Oladipo matchup heading into Sunday's game. Did Sunday's game, in your mind, give an edge to either of those players when it comes to Big Ten Player of the Year or even National Player of the Year honors?
No, and I submitted my vote before the game because I didn't want one game to influence me one way or another. That Burke had been consistent all season with his play by not having he had scored at least 15 in every conference game, and he had averaged about almost 20 points. But Oladipo does it in those big games. He had some big plays down the stretch, and people are going to talk about what Zeller did. Oladipo had quite a few plays that really kept him in that game. But in my mind, if you hadn't made your decision before yesterday's game, you couldn't make a determination just based off that and say, well, hey, whatever team wins, that's who's going to win this thing. Burke had 20 points and 4 assists. Oladipo had, I think, 14 points and 13 rebounds. That's almost a break-even in my book. If you want to say Burke was a little down because his assists weren't there, yeah, that's one thing. Oladipo just does so much, but you can make the argument that he's not even the best player on his team, given what Cody Zeller did. And if you ask Oladipo, he's always said, Cody Zeller is the player of the year. So if you can't parse that and you can't make up your mind which one is the better on the team, I think you have to go back to Burke and say he's done it in every game just about. You can write him down, 19 points, 4, 5, 6, 7 assists, somewhere in that range, and that's every single game. In some of those games, he's going to give you a little bit more than that. And so I thought Burke was the player of the year because of his consistency, because of his superlative play. He's carried that team. And you look at, without Oladipo, is Indiana going to be a top 5 team? They'll still be good. They'll be ranked somewhere in there, and probably in the top 2 or 3 in the Big Ten. Without Trey Burke, you've seen the times that he's been in foul trouble, and you've seen when he's struggled a little bit, or even just going to the bench for a little rest, what that team looks like. That's maybe a 500 team in the Big Ten without Trey Burke on that team. I think that's the head and shoulders piece for me that puts him above that.
Our guest on Michigan Game Day, Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Rod, it was such a deflating loss on Sunday, and not only did Michigan lose a share of the Big Ten title, they're now a 5 seed heading into the Big Ten tourney this week. Talk about how much more difficult that makes the odds of winning the Big Ten tournament from that 5 seed spot.
Well, what Beeline said was 3 games, 4 games, it doesn't really make a difference. If you're going to win, you're going to win. I kind of disagree with that piece. I think that 4th day if you make it to the championship, your legs are just jelly. And we saw Syracuse a few years ago who made it all the way through the Big East tournament, and then they made it all the way through the NCAA tournament. Those things are rare. But you need a team that's mentally strong, that can get through all that has the depth. You question whether Michigan has the depth to make it through, unless they just have some really pushover games against Penn State and potentially against Wisconsin, that they're able to win those games in the first half and rest some of their guys, or win in the first 30 minutes and rest some of their guys for longer periods, whether they'd be able to go through that 4 games, winning the Big Ten tournament. And I think you have to ask yourself whether you want to make a sustained run, because this Big Ten tournament is more like a mini NCAA tournament, or the NCAA tournament starting at the Sweet 16 because of how tough it's going to be. We've seen how tough Penn State can be. Then you get Wisconsin, you might get Indiana again, and then you might get Ohio State or Michigan State. That's a gauntlet to go through, and do you kind of play all your cards in the Big Ten tournament, or do you get prepped for the NCAA tournament and say, this is more important for us? I think for a team like Iowa that's fighting to get into the NCAA tournament, the Big Ten tournament is significantly more important. Michigan is probably set where they are, where they're going to be a number 2 or a number 3 seed. I mean, if they win the Big Ten tournament, maybe they go up to a low number 1 seed, maybe. But I think they can focus on, let's win a couple of games, let's get our mojo back, and let's get our swagger back, and let's get prepped for a longer run in the NCAA tournament and fix some of these deals. I guess the only bright side of that is that if you make it all 4 games in the Big Ten tournament, you have an opportunity to fix some of those issues, the boxing out issues, the defensive issues. I think that you did so much better on that. I don't think there's so much more to fix. I think it's just the offensive rebound or the defensive rebounding and those issues there that you want to fix before you say that you're ready for the NCAA tournament.
Well, most observers, Rod, are going to say Michigan just has to suck it up after a tough loss again, like Sunday, and bounce back starting Thursday. It's a new season, a new beginning, all of those cliches. But I have to think, I hope they're more resilient than I am when it comes to losses like that, especially how they let it get away. Do you think that's the kind of game that is going to have lingering effects, or they're just going to be able to put it aside and move forward?
I think it's going to have some lingering effects. The good thing is that they don't play again until Thursday, because we've seen after the Michigan State loss, after the Wisconsin loss, the way that those games ended, where they were bludgeoned at Michigan State, where they lost a heartbreaker in the last seconds at Wisconsin, they have that residual effect of it takes us a little bit to get over those things. And for Michigan, they're kind of fragile-minded because they have the majority of freshmen in that lineup. They're going to have to do a great job of almost like Men in Black, pull out the memory eraser, have everybody look at it, and zap their memory, and just start fresh and say, hey, this is what we can do. Because you look at that tape, and for the first 39 minutes, that game is won. That game is in the bag, where the defense that they played got them to that point where they were up 5. They had a great inbounds play for Robinson. They got them to what probably should have been an intentional foul, and what they reviewed and determined that it just wasn't. They did a lot of great things there. They look at that point and just cut it off at the 1 minute mark. I think they'll be fine. But that residual is going to be difficult for them to overcome. Burke was very, very disconsolate. I don't want to say he was crying or sobbing or anything, but it's as sad as we've seen, probably akin to what happened in the Ohio loss in the NCAA tournament, where they were really just down about it. It was just a shocker. It was so unexpected that they would even lose that game when you're up 5 in the final minute. So I think it's possible to bounce back from that, and I think having Penn State repeat the effort that they had in that upset is going to be a tall order for the Nittany Lions. I think getting the redemption factor in the Big Ten tournament could play a big role, where you can pay back to Penn State, you can pay back Wisconsin, you might get another shot at Indiana, and then you get maybe Michigan State or Ohio State. You can play all 4 teams that have beaten you in the Big Ten this year. And that may be something that they look at and say, hey, this might be some sort of redemption for us. This might allow us to go into the NCAA tournament with some good confidence and feeling like we've made up for all of our mistakes this year. We've atoned for all of our mistakes. So I think that's the bright side that B1 pitches, is that we've got to take this road, and this is going to make us a better team.
One of the things you do have to like about the tournament is that it's neutral court, Big Ten tournament, then the NCAA coming up. That makes a dramatic difference and really could for this young team.
Yeah, I think it's dramatic. It'll help because they're in unfamiliar places where they haven't been in Chicago. This group hasn't been in Chicago because the tournament has been in Indianapolis for so many years now. But I think the problem is that they play not as well away from home. If you even look at the neutral court games that they played, they were in New York where they had the majority of the fans there, in Brooklyn and also at Madison Square. Playing away from home has been difficult for them. They've just got to feel like they have a good start, they get some confidence, and they can continue rolling. And that, again, yesterday, they didn't get off to a good start, but they erased that deficit because partly they were at home. And we've seen they played much better at home against any of the opponents that they've lost to, against Ohio State and Michigan State for sure, because they've been at home and they've had that crowd around them. How do they react when they have a neutral crowd? How do they react when there are people that are not cheering when they make a highlight dunk or make a great play? I think that's what's going to test the psyche of this team and determine how far they can go in both the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. Maybe they're fortunate enough to end up in Auburn Hills, but what happens after that? Can you perform when you don't have all the fans on your side?
Well, Rod, this week, coming off the disappointing loss on Sunday, what does your gut tell you about Michigan's chances in the Big Ten tournament?
I don't think the chances are very good. I think they like the matchup with Penn State. They would like Wisconsin. I think they're just a better team than Wisconsin. I just don't think they could go in and beat Indiana the way that Indiana is confident and is rolling now. So I think 2 games in the Big Ten tournament is what we'll see. Because the semis, they'll lose to Indiana, and that will help them to get ready for the NCAA tournament. I think 2 wins gets them probably a high 3 or maybe a low number 2 seed, depending on how everybody else does. But I think that's a good spot for them. They'll end up in Auburn Hills, and they can take it from there, given the draw of the NCAA tournament. We'll see how that works out, too.
Well, it's going to be an exciting week, a lot to look forward to. Our guest on the show today has been Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News, and hopefully, Rod, will get you back on after the tournament after what we hope is a long run. So we look forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
It was another busy week on the Michigan athletic scene, and we'll talk about that next on Wolverine Quick Hits here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, Michigan point guard Trey Burke is the 2012-13 Big Ten Player of the Year. Burke becomes the first Michigan player to capture the honor since Glenn Rice won the award in 1989, and the 6th player in school history to win the award, joining Cazzie Russell 1965 and 66, Campy Russell in 1974, Roy Tarpley 1985, Gary Grant in 1988, and again Glenn Rice in 1989. The award was announced live on the Big Ten Network on Monday evening. Burke was the consensus player of the year selected by both the league's coaches and the media. The media's all Big Ten first team is Burke, Victor Oladipo, and Cody Zeller of Indiana, and Aaron Kraft and Deshaun Thomas of Ohio State. The coaches went with almost the same exact group, except Michigan's Tim Hardaway Jr. replaced Kraft. Both the media and the coaches named Gary Harris of Michigan State Freshman of the Year and Bo Ryan of Wisconsin Coach of the Year. Victor Oladipo was named Defensive Player of the Year by the coaches. The University of Michigan women's basketball team was unable to overcome multiple double-digit deficits to its arch-rival Michigan State, falling by a 62-46 score Friday evening in the quarterfinals of the Big Ten tournament held at the Sears Center Arena near Chicago. The Wolverines were held to 34.6% shooting, while the Spartans shot 51% in the game. Senior forward Rachel Sheffer and Nia Jordan led the Wolverines in the scoring column. Jordan contributed a team-high 12 points and 7 boards, while Sheffer chipped in 10 points and 2 rebounds. U of M will await selection to the 2013 NCAA tournament. The field will be released next Monday, March 18th at 7 p.m. on ESPN. The Wolverines are looking for their second straight appearance in the national tournament. So a great season for Coach Barnes-Arico and the ladies. They end the regular season with a record of 21 wins against 10 losses. The University of Michigan hockey team secured a spot in the quarterfinals of the 2013 Central Collegiate Hockey Association playoffs, the last of those, with a 6-2 victory over Northern Michigan on Saturday night at Yost Ice Arena. After Northern Michigan cut the lead to 2-1 late in the first period, U of M reeled off 4 straight goals, 2 in both the second and third periods, to ice the victory and the best-of-3 series with 2-0. The Wolverines blasted 50 shots on goal. A total of 10 Wolverines registered at least 1 point in Saturday's game, with Andrew Kopp, Alex Guptill, Cristobal Bunieves, AJ Treyas, and Jacob Truba collecting 2 points apiece. Meanwhile, freshman goaltender Steve Racine stopped 18 of the Wildcats' 20 shots on goal. So Michigan back in action this coming weekend in the quarterfinals, round 2 of the CCHA tournament, with a record of 15 wins, 18 losses, and 3 ties. And of course, they cannot lose this weekend or the season is over. In football news, the 2013 Mott Spring Game presented by PNC Bank in partnership with Michigan Athletics will be held at Michigan Stadium on Saturday, April 13th. The spring game is free to the public, and Team 134 is set to take the field at approximately 12:30 p.m. The gates to the Big House will be open at 10 in the morning, as events will surround the football team's final spring practice. The 5th annual Alumni Flag Football Game is scheduled to begin at 11 a.m., while Michigan's men's lacrosse team will face Ohio State, tentatively set to begin at 3:30 p.m. Full details surrounding the spring game and the men's lacrosse contest are still to come and will be updated on mgoblue.com. Of course, spring practice kicks off this Saturday, and a reminder again that Kyle Meinke from MLive will be joining us on next week's show with our very own spring football preview show. So don't forget to join us again next Wednesday for that. While many Michigan students polished fresh tans in the closing weekend of spring break, the number 14 Michigan softball team, now 17-6, was busy at work in Louisville for the Red and Black tournament. Sophomore pitcher Haley Wagner earned her 3rd win of the season in style for the first game of the tournament, striking out 7 against Illinois State, as she allowed only 1 hit in her first complete game this year. "We're going to have to ease Wagner into some innings," said Michigan coach Carol Hutchins. "Whatever innings she gets, she needs to help us win. I thought she did a nice job." The sophomore duo of Wagner and Dreisinger combined for the win against Miami on Friday. Wagner allowed 2 hits and struck out 3 in 5 innings before being relieved by Dreisinger. The right-handed sophomore, who has emerged as a valuable pitching asset this season, retired the first 6 batters in order to earn her first save of the season. Dreisinger also contributed at the plate, doubling in the bottom of the first inning to plate Sapping Field for a 1-0 lead. The Wolverines tacked on another run in the 4th to secure the 2-0 victory. Michigan finished its week with a 7-3 record. As spring rolls into Ann Arbor, the Wolverines know they need to continue improving in order to claim a 6th straight Big Ten title. The goal is Big Ten championships and Women's College World Series, Hutchins explained at the beginning of the season. "We're just going to shoot for the stars, and it's our hope to get there." Michigan women back in action this weekend. In baseball, a red-hot freshman pitcher and a well-balanced offense have the Michigan baseball team on a bit of a run lately. After a successful 3-1 record in last weekend's Snowbird Invitational in Port Charlotte, Florida, the Wolverines, who are now 8-7, headed to San Diego for the USD tournament, where they logged the same 3-1 mark. In Thursday's game against Holy Cross, Michigan knotted a 6-3 victory. Quality offensive production from the top to bottom of the order stood as the base of the Wolverines' early tournament success, as 4 different players recorded an RBI. But defensively, senior right-handed pitcher Ben Ballantyne stole the show with his 2nd win of the season. Through 6 innings of work, he allowed just 2 earned runs off 4 hits. Even more impressive, he walked only 1 batter and recorded 3 strikeouts. Anytime starters can get us into the 6th or 7th inning, it's huge, said Michigan coach Eric Bakich. We were able to build our lead, and without that start from Ballantyne, we wouldn't be able to do that. After a few scheduling changes due to Friday's inclement weather, Michigan finally took on St. Louis on Saturday. The optimism surrounding the pitching staff, especially after Ballantyne's start, quickly faded as numerous walks and errors hindered the Wolverines in a 9-5 loss to the Billikens. Michigan's pitching staff allowed 8 walks compared to just 2 for St. Louis. The Wolverines also gave up 13 hits and committed 2 errors, resulting in over 20 base runners for St. Louis throughout the game. After surrendering those countless opportunities to the Billikens, Michigan was unable to recover. You can't give any team free passes, Bakich said. We were playing catch-up, and that limits what you can do offensively as far as putting guys in motion and putting pressure on the defense. We gifted them a few runs right away, and that shouldn't have happened. The first game of a Sunday doubleheader was a rematch with Holy Cross, as the Wolverines took care of business yet again with a 7-4 victory. Michigan got off to a quick start and never looked back, scoring 4 runs throughout the first 4 innings. Sophomore first baseman Kyle Jusic went 4 for 4 with a run and an RBI, sealing another balanced day offensively for the Wolverines as 6 players tallied an RBI. We preached quality at-bats, and we continue to have a lot of balance and consistency in our lineup, Bakich said. It especially helps when you get a lot of production from the middle to the bottom of the order. Defensively, pitching woes subsided to a certain extent as the staff combined for 6 walks and 8 strikeouts. Sophomore left-handed pitcher Trent Skutnik got the start and allowed 3 earned runs off just 4 hits in 5 innings of work. Freshman Jacob Cronenwith pitched the last 3 innings without allowing a hit, capping off the first order of business that afternoon. In the second half of the doubleheader, Michigan took on tournament host San Diego in a back-and-forth affair. The Wolverines topped the Toreros 5-2 thanks to 3 eighth-inning runs and another solid outing from Hill. His early season success continued as he held San Diego to just 2 hits, none of which were earned. He added 5 strikeouts and just 2 walks in 6.2 innings. He's a special talent and he's got a bright future, but he has a long way to go before he is firing on all cylinders, Bakich said. But we've been pretty fortunate that he's been able to pitch out of jams, and using his makeup and competitiveness, he's put us in a position to win. For opposing teams, it's extremely scary, according to Bakich, that Hill has yet to master sufficient consistency with all 4 of his pitches, particularly his cutter and changeup, despite Hill's 1.45 ERA heading into Sunday's game. Likewise, senior center fielder Patrick Biondi and junior right fielder Michael O'Neill have been on a tear lately, as they knocked in 2 of the 3 timely runs late in the game. Additionally, they both recorded a hit in every game this weekend, which extended Biondi's hitting streak to 22 and O'Neill's to 19, dating back to last season. So heading into this week's play, the Wolverines now over the 500 mark with 8 wins and 7 losses. And finally, the Big Ten tournament gets underway on Thursday, and Michigan again will face Penn State just after 2 p.m. The game can be seen on the Big Ten Network. For the latest news and chatter about the Big Ten tournament and everything else that's going on during this very busy time of the year, become a member here at GBM Wolverine. Visit the site at www.gbmwolverine and sign up for membership today. You'll get the latest news on what's happening in the tournament, tidbits from spring football practice, and much more. So don't miss out on your daily Maize and Blue information fix. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and become a member today. I would love to hear from you regarding anything Maize and Blue. You can email me at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. Or give our listener line a call at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842, where you can leave a voicemail that we can use on an upcoming show. So if you have a minute, please get in touch with us. I'll have the email address and the phone number listed on my show notes page just in case you don't have a pen or pencil handy to jot that down. Next week, I'm taking my own spring break, but we'll be following all of the action of the Big Ten tournament, the CCHAs, and where we will be in the NCAA tournament for both men and women's hoops. Even though I'll be out of town, we'll still have a show up and ready to go next week. With spring practice getting underway Saturday, football will again be on our minds for the next month or so. Football beat writer Kyle Meinke from MLive is doing an 8-piece preview on spring football right now on MLive.com, so check that out. It's a good one. And he'll be joining us for a condensed preview version of our own. So if you're ready to talk some Michigan football again, tune us in next week. Thanks to this week's guest, Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Hopefully when I get back from vacation, we're still alive in the tournament and can continue talking Michigan hoops. So let's keep our fingers crossed. You never know what's going to happen in the NCAA tournament. It should be a blast. Have a great Wolverine week, and let's hope our Wolverines can bounce back this week in the Big Ten tournament. We'll see you right back here next week with Kyle Meinke from MLive for our spring football preview. Until then, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue.